Hi, I'm Nathan from Serious Geeks, and the latest video today is going to be a Tactica on the Vanguard Veteran Squad. To me, Vanguard Veterans are one of the big ones. They're one of the most competitive units in the entirety of 40k. Through their equipment options, Vanguard Veterans have the capacity for high movement, incredible toughness, and a lot of hitting power that can do a lot of damage to opponents. In a game of 40k, 9th edition requires a lot of movement around the table to be able to score objectives and to reach the opponent so that they can score their objectives, or you put a lot of pressure on them and kill them. Obscuring terrain is a genuine factor now. I go on about it a lot, but it means that you can actually hide and reach your opponents if you're rushing towards them, and the high movement of Vanguard Veterans helps them do this. So, as common with all my Tacticas, let's look at their stat line. Things look pretty standard at first. Movement 6, 3+ weapon skill and ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds apiece, thank you very much, all Space Marines have that now, brilliant. And they have 2 attacks apiece, which is okay, it's not bad, it's the equivalent of a Primaris. Leadership is 8, which is standard for a basic Space Marine veteran, and they have a 3+ armor save as expected from their power armor. You wouldn't think that Vanguard Veterans, just looking at their basic stat line, are the equivalent of a very high tier unit choice. I mean, look at Blade Guard, they have more attacks and they have more wounds per model. However, when we go to their options, that is where the unit really starts to shine. The first option, and one that I believe that should always be taken, regardless of your choice with the unit, even if you have transports for other places in the list or whatever which you would take, put a jump pack on this unit. You want them to have jump packs. The movement of 12 and the ability to jump over intervening terrain is amazing. It just changes the game for the better for this squad. At the moment, they come in at 19 points each with a 2-point upgrade for a jump pack, which is very competitive. It's incredibly cheap. In fact, if you compare them to Assault Intercessors, I know that's a Troops choice versus an Elite's choice, which has a whole different set of issues. They are the exact points cost because they have a very, very similar stat line. I think the leadership is the only difference. However, for 2 points extra over that, you get an Assault Intercessor that can leap 12 inches a turn over that obscuring terrain, so it can hide behind it before reaching the enemy. This upgrade also gives the fly and jump pack keywords and the Death from Above ability. The Death from Above ability, I'm not sure if you'll be using it, it's essentially just allows you to deep strike using old vernacular. It allows you to teleport onto the table anywhere you want, 9 inches away from the opponent. More than 9 inches away, as we know the rule. So that's the first big plus for this unit. The next big plus is the ability to take Storm Shields, which gives the unit a functional 2+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save. Even at 4 points a model, which if you combine with a jump pack is now 6 points extra a model, you're looking at a very tenacious unit on the table. It's got 2 wounds apiece, a 2+ armor save, 4+ invulnerable save on those models, and the ability to move up the table quickly and put pressure on the opponent at your discretion, where you want to be. It's a very incredible potent mix. Consider Terminators jumping up the table 12 inches a turn. That is what you're looking at. Okay, they haven't got the firepower, but you're looking at a very powerful unit. The third thing on this unit's data sheet that makes the unit very potent is the amount of different weapon options they have. Coming in at a bolt pistol and a Astartes chainsword, they're already fairly good in close combat and melee anyway. The Astartes chainsword with its -1 AP going into the Assault Doctrine that can become -2, and the ability to take an additional attack with that model means you're already going to be torrenting a lot of hits out against the opponent. To increase the potency of the unit in close combat, you can factor in additional weapons of your choice. You want to make this unit a complete blender for really cheap? You can get rid of their bolt pistol for a second Astartes chainsword. That's an additional 2 attacks per model, which starts to become incredibly potent and fiendish. Throw in power axes, power fists, power mauls, power swords, and you have the whole hog. But the real winner is the Lightning Claw. It grants +1 attack, an additional -2 AP over the Astartes chainsword, and you have the ability to reroll failed wounds. Common theme in 40k is that melee weapons are very cheap points-wise, so again, it's worth taking just about any of these options that float your boat. If you want to be super competitive, then the Lightning Claw seems like the best bet. There are certain chapters you do even better with the Lightning Claw, White Scars, for example, they do absolutely amazing with it because they get an increase in the amount of damage they do in melee, which means their lightning claws are going to be doing 2 damage apiece with the benefit of the rerolls to wound and the -2 AP and the extra attack. That is absolutely phenomenal. In the less competitive sense, it doesn't really matter the difference between a power sword and lightning claws. You're still going to have fun with the unit. They're still going to be powerful on the table. But obviously, like I say, if you want to be super competitive, it's about the lightning claw. Now, a word on power fists. They are very good. They're effective weapons. Because dreadnoughts have an inbuilt -1 to the damage roll, and now Death Guard have that as well, they're not going to be quite as effective as certain other weapons choices, and I think that really plays in a Vanguard veteran squad. It's not so bad in Terminators that have access to power fists because they can still smash some things that need it, but a Vanguard veteran squad, they're hitting on 4+, and they don't have the benefit of Fury of the First to give a +1 to hit in melee, so yeah, it's not as effective at that point, especially when you start taking casualties. There are some extra choices though. The options don't stop there. The ability to take pistols from the pistols list is also present, and it's generally not well done or thought of because the unit is so good in melee, you're not going to waste points on pistol shots. But there is a place to have a fairly small unit that has some decent pistol shots if it's going to drop in and then be a threat later on with its melee weapons. That is actually a valid tactic. You know, say you've got 5-man unit, you put 2 storm shields in the squad, and then you have 3 or 4 grav weapons or plasma weapons as pistols, and you drop in and you do a little bit of damage, and then you're a threat in the melee after that and the secondary objectives as well. It's a valid tactic. It's not something I personally would do. I would rather use the unit as a full squad shock assault type value, but it's still pretty good. Just be careful overcharging plasma. Overcharging plasma kills the model, 2 wound models, and if you've got a storm shield with a plasma weapon, then you're going to be wasting points if they die. Another option, heavy Thunderhammer. That's a Death Watch chapter thing, and the whole squad can take Thunderhammers. I left that out separately because Thunderhammers are very powerful weapons, and if you want your build to be super scary, then instead of taking the Power Fist, go for the Thunderhammer, and they will be able to do some damage. I personally would only put 1 or 2 in the squad to try and give them a little bit more utility, keep points cost down, give them some extra bodies in there which are just armed with bolt pistols and chain swords, or a chain sword and a storm shield, just to be able to keep the, well, essentially the red shirts from taking all the hits and the rest of the squad getting hurt. And then there's the Vanguard Veteran Sergeant. He's obviously got a superior stat line, he's got +1 attack, and he can have a Relic Blade. Relic Blades are great, they're very good. Again, you probably want to give him Twin Lightning Claws. Very effective build. But Relic Blades are lovely weapons, they're really powerful. So, talking about all these weapon choices, it's literally a kid in a sweet shop. You can choose just about anything you want. You can really go to town with customization. You can make a very fluffy unit, a unit, for those who don't know what fluffy means, a very background focused unit that is representative of all sorts of things you want to do with the army. The models are great and they're modular as well. They're very customizable. If you buy an Assault Marine squad and a Vanguard Veteran squad, the amount of different poses you've got and the amount of different weapon options you have is unbelievable. That's exactly what I've done. In fact, I did it twice. So I've actually got 20 Vanguard Veteran Marines and all the weapons I can hope to dream for later use as well. Now, we'll move on. Let's look at the abilities. As always, they have the Angels of Death special rule, which means they get Shock Assault, most importantly. That's an extra attack when they're being charged or have charged or doing a heroic intervention, which is very unusual, but it can happen because obviously there are certain abilities that grant that to Space Marines. Combat squads, I don't think anyone's going to bother taking these. I think it's a residual rule from long ago and it doesn't do much for an assault unit, if I'm honest. You want the 10-man squad or you want them to be 8-man, so you're saving points and you've chosen 8 models. You don't want to be splitting the squad up anyway. Faction keywords, Imperium, Adeptus Astartes and Chapter, is exactly what we expect, and standard keywords, Infantry, Corps, Melter Bombs and Vanguard Veteran Squad. We'll touch on the melter bombs later on, but the core keyword brings us nicely onto character support. What kind of support boosts up this unit's chances of creating havoc on the table? The good news is just about any character you can think of will help out this unit. The bad news on that is that an apothecary, company ancient, or even a company champion who might be there to support with their close combat prowess are going to be a little bit slow to keep up with your Vanguard veterans. Most people are going to put them with jump packs because it's such good value, and at the end of the day, it's the mobility you're paying for that really, really helps the unit. So I'm going to basically just say company ancients, apothecaries, these things, they do work, they do help out. The Primaris characters, they can help out if they're within range, but odds are they're not going to be. So we're going to discount those units on the basis that they can't keep up with your Vanguard veterans. Of course, I'm not discounting their ability to help. Let's be honest. Apothecaries helping out and raising people from the dead is great. Company ancients enabling you to attack one last time, or whatever ability certain chapters have. As an example, Standard of Macragge in Violet gives an extra attack to each model, but they're not going to be generally very close. It's going to be very situational and you can't really plan for it, so I'm not going to talk too much about those benefits. So having the core keyword means that chaplains are very effective with this unit. They can give them any of their litanies that help with melee and really help the unit out. Again, speed is a factor, so you want your chaplain to either have a jump pack or the Primaris chaplain on a bike to be able to help the unit. Both of these options are good. Chaplains themselves are fairly beefy in close combat. They're not very survivable, but then you're going to be hitting like a ton of bricks with your Vanguard veteran squad. Odds are there's not going to be much coming back at the chaplains, and the Primaris chaplain is obviously a little bit more survivable. He's got 7 wounds, which compared to the standard chaplain who might have a jump pack is a lot higher, and he has a toughness of 5. So consider both of those options if you want to be able to boost up your Vanguard veteran squad. Obviously the chaplain on jump pack comes in at cheaper than the Primaris chaplain, but the Primaris chaplain has a lot of benefits over him. In a similar manner to the company ancient and the apothecary, the Terminator version of a chaplain can help out. He's actually got better utility because he can teleport in, just like the company ancient in Terminator armor could. But again, the unit will often leave him behind because they're so fast, and it's not something to strategically plan for, so I wouldn't recommend it. Quickly on librarians, they have some options. Veil of Time, very useful for boosting up the ability for the squad to be able to reach close combat. Rerolling your advanced rolls, not so good, but rerolling your charge rolls, absolutely stunning and brilliant. And if you do get a counter charge, you will always fight first anyway, which is quite useful. Psychic Fortress looks great, but 5+ invulnerable save, probably best used on someone else, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, Vanguard veterans have access to a 4+ invulnerable save in the shape of their storm shields, and it also gives them the benefit of a 2+ armor save, so you're probably not going to bother with that. So really, there's not much else that a librarian can give to the unit, but it's nice to be able to get a reroll for your charge rolls, and you don't have to pay a command point to do so, so that's very useful. Now, lieutenants, they are quite useful in theory for helping a Vanguard veteran squad, but as I said, the best weapon for a Vanguard veteran squad is most likely going to be the Lightning Claw, which, as we know, gives you a native re-roll to wound roll anyway. So you don't need a lieutenant. It's a waste of points at this point. It's a nice idea, but I wouldn't bother with them. I think the lieutenant is not really needed for a Vanguard veteran squad. I mean, you might take things such as power fists, but again, you're wounded on a 2+, reroll the 1, which is great, but at the end of the day, you don't need it because you're wounding so well anyway, and you're going to be hitting on 4s anyway with power fists. You probably haven't focused on those choices. Captains, they are the obvious choice. They give reroll 1s to hit. You can upgrade them to be chapter masters. You can have a captain on a bike, captain with a jump pack. They can accompany a Vanguard veteran squad, and they can be a very powerful addition to the squad as well, because they are quite good in close combat themselves. So the logical thing to move on to now would be the stratagems page. Gone are the days where we could utilise Honour the Chapter to get double the amount of attacks, a second round of combat from a Vanguard veteran squad. That is now only assault intercessors, so we lament that loss, but there's still some nice stratagems that they can take advantage of. First one I'm going to cover here is Hammer of Wrath. When a jump pack unit jumps into close combat, manages to reach the enemy, roll a d6 for 1 command point. for each jump pack model in the unit that's in engagement range, and for each dice roll that equals or exceeds the enemy's toughness value, you score a mortal wound. This, if you have a 10-man squad, gives a great way of putting extra damage onto the opponent, and even against Space Marines it is incredibly potent. A 10-man unit can expect to put 3 to 4 extra mortal wounds on a Space Marine unit, which is very nice because that's done straight away after finishing a charge move. Lower toughness models are going to suffer obviously more casualties, and they don't have extra wounds to be able to soak it up, so it's a very nice little choice. For 1 command point, it's quite a nice little ploy. I wouldn't probably use it if the squad was smaller, save it for the big squads making combat, but it can turn the tide. It can provide those extra wounds that you might need to get in and do a little bit extra damage. Another stratagem that directly affects this unit, and it's a great one, Melter Bomb. The ability for 1 command point to put 2d3 mortal wounds on a single model if it sacrifices its close combat attacks. Remember, you might not always have close combat weapons that are really potent on models such as Storm Shield. You don't want them to be the first to die when they've got an expensive weapon, so they might only have a bolt pistol or a chainsword. Therefore, they are a great candidate to roll a 3+ and try and get 2d3 mortal wounds on a vehicle. When the unit is also reduced and you might have a lot smaller unit, they are a great way of putting damage on the opponent still and being a threat. Consider even a knight is going to be vulnerable to this. You might have a big bad knight that is just chomped through a whole bunch of your Vanguard veterans. You've managed to fail some 4+ invulnerable saves, whatever. Well, you've only got 3 models left, and now you do 2d3 mortal wounds to it. That's actually the potential to cause absolute havoc. Minimum of 2, a nice average of 4 mortal wounds. For 1 command point, you can't go far wrong with that, and you should always have it in the back of your mind. Particular note is it helps a lot against dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts have a native -1 to the damage, and mortal wounds circumnavigate that, so it's definitely worth doing. Next up, and one that a lot of people miss over and they don't think of because it isn't as obviously damaging as something like melter bombs, but you have the adaptive strategy stratagem. It won't always be relevant to a unit that is a melee unit like this, but say you're a tactical doctrine player, you like to be in the tactical doctrine because you're an Ultramarines player, so you want 2 turns of that. You've got at least 3 turns of potential melee. I mean, it's unlikely you're going to get in melee in first turn, but anyway, you've got 3 turns of potential melee for a Vanguard veteran squad, and you could give them this stratagem for 2 command points, and they will count as being in the Devastator, Tactical, and Assault Doctrine for the complete turn. This means that their close combat weapons are going to be more potent, and the rest of your army is not going to suffer from moving into a different doctrine that you don't want to. Obviously, certain other chapters get more benefits from this. That means that the Super Doctrine, as people like to call it, for White Scars gets kicked in. The Blood Angels one gets kicked in as well, so they get an additional attack per model. It's very nice. It's definitely something to bear in mind. It's a very strategic ploy as well. You can plan around this. You can use it to be able to get the most out of a unit that is otherwise a fairly expensive investment. I mean, for Space Marines, it's fairly average, but it's still, full squad is going to be 230 to 250 points. Getting the most out of them is very handy, and this helps you do that. Now, the last stratagem that I want to talk about is Commanding Oratory. This is a chaplain upgrade. It's 2 command points, or obviously if you're a Master Chaplain, Master of Sanctity, it's slightly cheaper. But anyway, it allows your chaplain to recite 1 litany that hasn't been recited that turn for free, and it works automatically. So this litany can be anything you want, which could really help a Vanguard veteran squad. It means you can stack litanies on them, and it also means that out of phase, if you drop in with your chaplain and you'll want to get into close combat, you can give them a +2 to their charges. And that is very useful. It's very potent. It means that you can actually drop in and avoid a lot of firepower on turn 2 with a full 10-man squad, and it not be a gamble whether you're going to make that 9-inch charge, because now you've got a 7-inch charge which you can re-roll with a command point or Veil of Time from a librarian. It's very useful. So what main use will I recommend for this unit? Well, firstly, I wouldn't put them in a transport. I wouldn't bother with that. It's nice and all to have a model with the access to a Storm Shield and close combat weapons, but take company veterans if that's your want. I mean, they're able to protect characters in that basis as well, and if you're going to be forking out loads of points on transports, you could have put that point into a jump pack and saved points. So it does seem to me to be more valuable to take a jump pack squad at all times. I mean, that's why you take this squad over something else anyway. If you want a foot slogging, tenacious, close combat force, take Blade Guard. That's what they're there for. The point is, take a squad with jump packs and give them jump packs. You know, it's like taking your assault marines and don't give them a jump pack. There's no point. My other recommendation is take a smattering of storm shields. You don't have to put one on every single model. Basically, 4 out of 10 is not too bad because you're keeping points cost down. You should have other choices in the army that should be getting focused anyway. And it means that your close combat weapons can go on the other models and you save a bit of points. You save a bit of points by putting certain close combat weapons on certain models. As for choice of close combat weapons, as I mentioned earlier, go with your heart. Go with what you really want. If you want to be super competitive, go with Lightning Claws. But for the most part, you don't need to. I think armies such as Blood Angels can get away with not having Lightning Claws, but I'll talk about that in a sec. For the most part, Lightning Claws are the way forward. They're brilliant. A pair of them on the models that don't have Storm Shields, absolutely phenomenal. Basically, your Vanguard Veteran Squad should be utilised as a spearhead. It should be there to take objectives off the opponent, put pressure on the opponent, and to cause a lot of problems. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use them to drop down elsewhere on the table. Use them as, say, a Harrier unit that drops down and assaults an objective or puts pressure on the opponent deployment zone. They have a bit of firepower, perhaps. You've given them some pistols. But again, I don't really see them as a unit that should be doing that. I would use Inceptors for that, probably differently, or just normal assault marines. So Vanguard Veterans I would use as a spearhead unit. I'd increase the squad number. I'd put them to a minimum of 8, 10 preferably, and I'd go to town. I'd hug obscuring terrain, leap forward, and just cause trouble. Army lists that might include Dreadnoughts, Blade Guard and an Impulsor, and a Terminator squad can put a lot of pressure on opponents. You'll be able to literally rush up the table with the Impulsors turn 1, disembark, have a powerful unit there, and then they're supported with 10 models, 20 wounds of Vanguard Veterans as well. It's really, really high pressure stuff. And then you can turn 2, put a Terminator squad with them, even a 10-man Terminator squad if you want. These things, I think, are very useful on the table and something I would recommend. And it means that Space Marines have a very solid attacking element. Lastly, let's talk about some of the chapters that get the most benefits from Vanguard Veterans. Most notably, as always, are the Blood Angels. They're a little bit different in that they don't really need the Lightning Claws as much because they do have +1 to wound, which means you can go a bit cheaper on some of their models. 2 chainswords, for example, means that you've got a lot of attacks with Shock Assault, and that means you're going to be charging into close combat. You get +1 to wound for being a Blood Angel, so you're going to be wounded on the 3+ now with a chainsword. And if you're in the Assault Doctrine, potentially you've used Adaptive Strategy to do so, if it's a different turn, and you've actually got so many attacks coming from a basic model that has no points upgrades added into it. And it's going to be really dangerous on the table. -2 AP if it's an Assault Doctrine, an additional attack for being a Blood Angel in Assault Doctrine, an additional attack for having Shock Assault, and 2 additional attacks for Chainswords. That's per model. That is astonishingly phenomenal. Other armies, such as White Scars, really benefit from having basic weapons that are upgraded to damage 2. I mean, imagine a load of chainsword attacks hitting the opponent and doing 2 damage. That is pretty painful as well. Of course, that doesn't mean the other chapters that don't focus on close assault don't benefit from Vanguard Veteran Squads. Of course they do. Vanguard Veteran Squads provide an attacking element that is incredibly potent regardless of the other upgrades, but they don't have as many stacking options, perhaps being an Imperial Fist or an Ultramarines player, but they're still going to be a very dangerous prospect. For this reason, I highly recommend Vanguard Veterans. I think as far as competitive games go, they are always going to be top tier because they have survivability on a 12-inch moving platform, which is very potent and it's game winning in many circumstances. If you're an aggressive player like me, you like to take Terminators that teleport directly in, and you like assault elements, take Vanguard Veterans, regardless of being an Ultramarines player. It also means that your support elements, your tactical marines, your intercessors that are providing objective scoring and providing support in bolter fire, they're not going to be targeted, because let's be honest, you're going to want to shoot those 10 Vanguard veterans who are about to charge into you. So that's pretty much all there is to say about Vanguard veterans. Go out, buy a pack of Vanguard veterans, get some assault marines, put them together, bash those kits. Kit bashing's great, and you've got loads of weapons for choices for other stuff as well. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Quite a long one today, but it's quite an established unit and it's a very powerful unit with a lot of options. So I covered quite a lot. Obviously I might not have covered every potential combination possible. There's stratagems that individual chapters can have now access to, but of course that would be relevant to them. And yeah, just take the unit. They're great. They're a great choice. They provide different options on the table to move forward. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, help support the channel, and peace out.